Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Anderson, and I have an energy healing practice called the Gold Runner. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you about a topic that is very close to my heart and that I feel very passionately about. What is magic and the grammar of magic? In my monthly ritual earth medicine, earth magic videos, I use the word magic quite a lot. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time to unpack the way that I think about it and to share some examples of how you can just start to think about how you move through your daily life, how you can be working with magic maybe in ways that you didn't imagine before. And this isn't really a how-to, it's more like as I share my experiences, I want you to be able to start seeing ways that you're already doing some of this or ways that you could play it up even more. So one thing I want to be clear about is that I'm not positioning myself as any kind of arbiter of what counts or doesn't count for magic. I'm really just speaking from my own experience as a ritual master and a ceremonial magician in the Hermetic lineage of King Solomon. And this lineage is an ancient order of metaphysicians and esoteric healers. We follow an unbroken kind of line of spiritual teachings, and we talk about self-knowledge as the key to all transformation. And so that's really the lens through which I view what I'll be sharing with you in terms of a few ways to encounter or work with magic in your life. So why the grammar of magic? Magic is such a broad topic, and you could go so many different places with it that it occurred to me that there are different kind of parts of speech that correspond to what magic is, how it works, how it functions, and so really this is to give just a bit of structure, a kind of framework for thinking about and for talking about magic. And so I'll just start with the way that magic can be a noun. This might be the most obvious, that it is a noun. It's a person, a place, a thing, or a concept. And the way that I think about magic as a noun is that magic is energy. So it's the primordial kind of life force, and that life force is what animates and circulates throughout the universe. And in that way, or thinking about it in that way, there's really nothing that isn't magic, kind of if you want to get technical. Everything is made up of energy that is moving at different rates, and it's really impossible to, in a sense, extract the magic from the fiber of absolutely everything. So the world is magic. It's flow. It's life. And that life force courses through us, humans, as well. We get to feel the blessing of its effects, and we also feel the responsibility of the creative urge. This is our spiritual inheritance and our birthright. So we are kind of the stewards and we are the beneficiaries of magic, both. We give to this magic, to this life force, and we receive from it as well. And with some persistence, with some patience, with some discipline, and a lot of reverence, we can also learn to kind of harness this life force, this powerful current, and use it to manifest our thoughts, to manifest our desires, and to create a reality for ourselves that reflects really who we are as human beings. Magic is also an adjective that we can use. We can talk about magic as an elevated state of being or expression. Magic is the extraordinary, it is the miraculous, the unexpected, and the beautiful or the graceful. We can use it to talk about individuals or scenarios that feel to us enhanced in some way. When we have an experience of this state of being that we think of as magical, we have a sense of being transported, of being uplifted or reminded of our own magnificence, and kind of like we're firing on all cylinders, like we've finally come home to ourselves, even just for a moment. So magic as an adjective, I think, makes me think of total presence, like the fullness of our presence with us in one single moment or extended like a series of moments. So very, very rare to be kind of in that suspended state of kind of bliss, but that happens to us naturally throughout our lives, and it might surprise us, or it might be something that we have cultivated in some way, shape, or form. And one of the goals that I see for working with magic is to be able to not just have those moments happen by chance or by circumstance, but to be actually able to do something, to practice something, to work with something in a way that allows us to find those moments, to seek those moments, to create and to experience those with intention as a part of just being alive. And finally, I want to talk about magic as a verb or as an action. And this is where things really start to get juicy, because magic is the art of transformation. So it's a kind of intentional manifestation, and it's externalized desire. So very often we just have different desires or different hopes and dreams kind of bubbling up within us that might come out every once in a while. But magic is actually bringing those forward, working with them, using them as kind of creative fodder, and changing reality. So we talk about making magic. And in the mystery school for the lineage of King Solomon that I practice, we talk about magic as either creating something from nothing or transforming one thing into something else. So alchemy, if you think about the historical and the way, the physical kind of alchemy, where philosophers and scientists back in the Middle Ages were seeking to change lead into gold. And so the physical transformation that was supposed to take place, but that maybe there was an element missing. It was a quest that was sort of never fully realized. But this is what we seek to do in a spiritual practice in a lot of ways, is to transform the lead of our kind of physicality into the gold of our spirituality. And this is kind of another topic, because I don't personally subscribe to the idea that we need to in some way kind of divest ourselves of the physical in order to have a spiritual experience. We are here on this planet to also experience the physicality, being in our bodies. That's where, in a lot of ways, that's where the magic happens, is in our bodies. So again, that's a topic maybe for another time, but just remembering that we are both, that we are bodies, that we are spirits, that we have physicality, that we have spirituality, and allowing these two kind of properties or aspects of ourselves to work together, not forgetting either one of them, like holding both of those things in the same moment with intention, is where we find that we are quite powerful, that we are quite extraordinary. So magic is a distinct act of, when we use it as a verb, a distinct act of consciously directing or commanding life force energy within and around us and then guiding it to some desired end. So we're in this moment we're working creatively, but instead of only using the physical elements, including our bodies, to express ourselves, we're working with energy principles and we're working with some spiritual wisdom or insight, whether that comes from a tradition, a long line of teachings, or whether that comes from within. And in a very real way, the teachings that come to us from without are really just reminders, triggers to kind of open up what's within us. So magic can be thought of as the act that follows a thoughtful and heartful decision to organize our impulses and our attention around a particular outcome, and then to invite all of our wisdom and all of our presence to that particular process. So just as an example, let's say that you decide that you want to create a new career for yourself. And of course, you will engage your intellectual knowledge and you might get out there into the world and start talking to people and stirring things up and asking questions and inviting input. And that's one way, and that's kind of a worldly way and a Newtonian way of doing things. That's cause and effect and working with the physics of our material world. And that's wonderful. We don't ignore that. We're still playing by the rules of our three-dimensional world, but we can also remember, and magic reminds us, that these three dimensions aren't the only dimensions out there. Quantum physics tells us there are countless other dimensions, really in an unfathomable number, and whose rules of engagement, whose rules of space, time, physics may look nothing like ours, may not exist at all. And I think it's much easier to work with magic, or in a magical way with a magical mindset, when I can remember to relax my sense that I can or should have a full understanding of how the universe behaves. Even something as basic as, there's nothing basic about light, but even something as kind of fundamental as light, which we maybe think that we understand or we start learning about when we're quite young. But light sometimes behaves as a particle and sometimes behaves as a wave. And it's not one or the other, it's always both. And it expresses itself differently in different moments depending on the situation and the other bodies in the quantum field and their motion or their intent. In a way, magic is about remembering that we are also a body in the field. We are an object, but we are also the field itself, and we're made up of an infinite number of particles or waves. And at one level and in one expression, we are solid matter. At a different level and in a different expression, we are pure consciousness, and we are really both at the same time. We don't have to choose. Sometimes we may feel like we are choosing. Sometimes we feel like the decision might be getting made for us. But we're neither. In some ways, we're both particle and wave. In some ways, we are neither. We are part of the source of life that can't really be pinned down to anything. And this mystery is part of what working with magic allows us to engage with. So as we're working in a magical way, or as we're making magic, we are truly remembering ourselves. So I'll kind of climb out of this quantum rabbit hole to offer an example of how you might use magic to create the career in the example that I gave. So you do your homework, yes, you mobilize your intellect, your resources, you start to understand your options, you start to work out a plan and so on. You're very thorough, that's great. And perhaps you also set up an altar to the kind of life that you want to have, because the career is really an anchor for something that you want to have in your life, something that speaks more deeply to your soul. So you perhaps think about the kind of life that you want to have, and then you place on your altar some objects, some symbols that remind you of this vision and remind you of that deeper urge, that deeper and more intimate kind of desire of your soul. And then you keep these intentions close. You see them in your space, maybe every day. You engage with them in some way, and they guide you, and they signal to, these objects signal to the subtle world of invisible magnetic forces in the quantum field that this is what I want. Look, here, this is what I'm after. Here's how I'm representing that. And then perhaps you take it a step further and you find a way to articulate with your voice what it is that you want. So you fire up the throat chakra. This is really very important to use the voice, to actually speak out loud what it is that you want. You speak your intention. You create waves of sound that you put out into the universe. And these waves are like homing devices. They're like arrows pointing to both what these objects and elements on your altar represent and remind you of what it is that you're moving toward. So, dear quantum field, do you see this here? This is what I mean. Dear divine guidance, this is what I seek. So sharing that out loud, and that is, again, that's a very, very important step. It's also a different way of kind of organizing our energy around this goal. By the time that we're able to articulate what it is that we really want, that desire has passed through a lot of different layers of processing and a lot of different lenses that are very valuable. So I mentioned intention. I mentioned expressing that intention or symbolizing or representing it with an altar. I mentioned actually speaking out loud what it is that you wish to receive or that you wish to create. Sharing that maybe in the form of a prayer or a supplication. You might also ask for help. So you might ask for help from angels, if you work with angels, or if you find comfort in kind of acknowledging or validating the presence of angels or other beings of light, other ascended masters, so great maybe philosophers or practitioners of spirituality, such as Jesus Christ, such as the Buddha, and asking for the insight, asking for the guidance, and for that protection in order to have a safe enough space to create what it is that you want to create. You can also throw into the mix, and I highly recommend throwing in a sacrifice. All magic needs a sacrifice of some kind, and no, not that kind of sacrifice. I mean the sacrifice of beliefs, the habits, the relationships that are holding you back. And these can be the highest price of all, right? Magic is a practice that asks a price because it is a sacred energy exchange. Remember, I said this is about transforming something into something else. That is a transformation at the quantum level, at an energetic level, and then eventually kind of percolates into the physical level. So it's a sacred energy exchange, and it requires a sacrifice. It asks a price. And it's great if we can be the ones who choose that price. Just to get a little bit kind of deeper into the weeds for a moment, there are people in the world who work at this level of manifestation who are paying with their soul and with their humanity, because they are, with their manifestations, they are harming others, or they don't care enough to try not to harm someone on their way to their goal. Again, they might not know that they're paying with their soul. They might, maybe if they did understand that they would choose differently. But there is a lot of unconscious conjuring going on around out there in the world. There's a rule of thumb, or kind of philosophy in Wicca, which is one kind of form of practicing earth reverence. And that rule is called the rule of three. It's also sometimes called the threefold law or the law of return. And very loosely, it's a little bit like karma, but there are differences that I won't get into here. But the law says that whatever we put out into the world in a magical context, as we are conjuring, as we're casting a spell, comes back to us 3 times over. And we could say that generally in everyday life too. Kind of what we put out there is what we're going to get back, and kind of like the golden rule. But when we start engaging with magic, the stakes become higher, because more of our energy, more of our focused, kind of concentrate energy goes into something more intent, more desire, more passion, more thought. And our thoughts are very powerful. So the more energy that we put into them, the more potency they have. The more of whatever emotion that we bring to our conjuring also goes out there into the world. And so for me, that means I don't step into my magic circle to cast a spell if I'm feeling super funky. But of course, I'm human, and so I feel super funky sometimes. And that is where my meditation practice and where my rituals come into play. I use these daily practices of mindfulness, of heartfulness, of creating kind of internal harmony to keep me clear enough so that I can, in good faith and with integrity, be engaging every single day with magic, because I want to be doing that. That's very, very important to me. And I wouldn't be able to do my work to help others heal otherwise. And so if, again, magic has a price. The price that I have said I'm willing to pay is the price of my ignorance, my ego, my worldly programming of certain expectations and entitlements, feeling like I deserve certain things. So I'm willing to show up every day and kind of set all of that aside, at least for 30 minutes at a time as I'm meditating, or 60 minutes as I'm doing my rituals. And then when I go to kind of pick up that mantle again of like normal human thoughts and emotions, which still happen, they feel lighter. And then I can enter into the more kind of serious spiritual work without that immediate burden, without the charge of those emotions. And so that kind of reminds me of something else that I want to share, which is that as I have been working with magic, as I have been very heartfully working to understand myself, as I have been setting my altar, as I have been speaking out loud my intention, as I have been waiting kind of with patience and gratitude to receive, I know that magic has also been working on me quite powerfully. And I know that in part because what I ask for, what I want, now feels closer to what I actually think I really need, what my spirit wants me to have. I just have a better handle than I did 3 years ago, 3 months ago, even 3 weeks ago on what I need. And what we need is something that many of us don't understand, because we don't understand ourselves. I will always be working to better understand myself, but it's really gratifying, it's really rewarding to see how much has changed for me in the time that I have been working with casting spells, working within this spiritual lineage, working with the meditations and with the different exercises to train my intuition. All of it becomes part of just a way of showing up in the world with that full, again, our full kind of presence, bringing our gifts forward. That's what the opportunity that magic gives us to do that. And that magic starts to work on us when we take these steps, when we say, there's something that I would like to create, but I'm not going to do it in just a casual way. I'm not going to just wait for it to happen to me. I am going to bring all of myself to this moment, bring all of myself to this intention, and I'm going to create a kind of intimacy with myself. So how does any of this actually work, right? It sounds very poetic or really lovely to think about our intentions kind of becoming manifest. But the way that I think about it is that, as I mentioned earlier, we can remember that everything is energy, just energy moving at different speeds with different degrees of density. And as we are doing spell work, casting a spell, we in a way are knocking on the door of the higher realm of very fast moving, pure, unseen or invisible energy, that quantum field, and we're saying, like, hello, I would like to place an order, please. And again, we do that through prayer, through meditation, through maybe earth reverence, through some kind of ceremony and ritual, even really simple rituals of just sitting down, gathering your energy to you, your presence to you, and sharing something out loud that you would like to see become a reality. But again, just bringing our presence and our humility forward. And as we move through these higher realms and work with that energy through visualization, through meditation, through speaking what it is that we want, we have an effect. Our sound waves, our intentions, our thoughts work on these much less dense layers of energy. They change the makeup of that energy field. And then eventually that change, that transformation kind of trickles down little by little, transforming the denser, slower, visible, tangible realm of the physical. So it's a process of growth or of percolation. It doesn't happen just instantaneously. It could happen instantaneously if we were so perfectly aligned kind of with all of these different realms that we could just kind of reach through and grab it. But we have chosen these physical bodies, and part of that means that we have said that we're willing to wait a bit longer because we want to see what it feels like to have that also, not just in the spiritual realm, but with us here in this physical plane. And I think, any time that you see magic in the movies, or you hear stories, fairy tales, in a way, these stories show magic over a kind of time lapse. Yes, we do have the power as human beings to influence the physical world, but it doesn't happen quite as quickly for the reasons that I've mentioned, and also because if it happened kind of as we wanted right away, it would be such a shock to our physical system that we would all be just kind of out of our minds. We exist in this physical world, and we do need to some extent play by the rules. And I like to remind myself of this sometimes when things seem to be taking too long or don't look exactly the way that I expected. I remember that things are working themselves out, kind of behind the scenes or behind the veil, if that's a way that you like to think about things, and with fewer fireworks, perhaps. Not always. Sometimes it can be quite a spectacular and sudden transformation. But I think if fireworks went off every time that we made our magic, we would be unwell. We wouldn't be able to kind of take that feedback. So I've just kind of learned that subtle is okay. Subtle is sustainable. Subtle gets the job done. And if the intention is pure, the spell has been performed in good faith, the transformation works its way, again, through the material plane until it gets manifested. And I realize that I have been talking about spells here without kind of giving a definition for a spell. The way that I think about spells is that they are a formalized kind of ceremonial expression of whatever it is that you want to create. And that could be also just a request for protection, a request for peace. So it doesn't have to be trying to, again, like create that career or create a brand new relationship. It really can be just a sense of well-being. It can be a spell to heal. But I want to save a deeper dive into spells for another video. So just continuing on kind of what is magic, and we'll build from there. So the last thing that I want to talk about in this introductory video is why spell magic with a K at the end of it. The reason for that is that in my spiritual lineage, this K is sort of what sets the practice of magic apart from just the kind of general phenomenon or the sort of wish for something better. In some ways, the K is the way that we opt in, the way that we put ourselves into that equation, that we say, I am a part of this process, and that I'm not just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping for something miraculous to happen, that I'm willing to do the work that is necessary. The K is also, you can think of it as that it stands for keys, and that the keys to true magic are the sacred metaphysical teachings that have been passed down through generations of initiates, in my case, in this unbroken lineage, and that include things like self-mastery, the healing arts, ritual mastery, meditation, and sacred geometry, and that it acknowledges that not just anyone can make magic at this level, that you have to really have the dedication, that you have to treat it like a practice, and that you treat it like a practice of self-discovery. As we move to shape the energy around us to kind of meet ourselves where we are, we also have to observe our motives and our judgments, our attitudes, and our expectations. These all matter tremendously in the context of ritual work and magic with a K. By itself, magic is neutral. It's neither good nor bad, positive or negative. It really adopts the strengths, the faults, the intentions of the person who wields it. And intention really is the primary ingredient in working with magic with a K. And not all intentions are created equal. To me, it makes sense that a clouded and chaotic mind can't produce a pure motive to work with. Only a mind with clear and disciplined awareness can do so. And I'm not saying that we need to achieve perfect clarity in order to do anything worthwhile. Of course, that isn't possible. But as we choose to work on ourselves, to understand ourselves better, to use our discernment, our magic starts to more faithfully reflect what it is that we want in the world, and then we start connecting with what comes back to us much more deeply. I truly believe that we are kind of firing out intentions every day into the universe, and stuff is coming back to us that we did not know we pulled the trigger on, that we didn't realize that strange experience we had was an intention that wasn't fully formed, or that didn't have the layers of emotional baggage cleared off of it. And so I think we miss out on how powerful we are because we don't see those connections. And the more that we practice a way of being present to ourselves, the more that we sync ourselves up with our own natural rhythms, with the rhythms of the earth, with the rhythms of the cosmos, the more direct those connections seem. And we're like, oh, yeah, I did ask for that, and then here it is. That's amazing. So rather than just kind of firing these kind of blanks and getting strange results, really starting to intentionally shape those channels, those connections, and and working on ourselves as though we are a sculpture, that we are removing layers that are not who we are in order to see who we're becoming, who we're meant to be. And the more of that form of ourselves that becomes exposed, that becomes obvious to us, the more direct and the more validating that magic becomes. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for your curiosity. Thank you for bringing your magic to this platform, to this moment. And I have shared a lot about, of course, what I think that magic is, does, means, and I will add here at the end a couple of ways that you can connect with me if you have questions, or if you would like to share some of your own experiences with magic. It would mean a lot to me to hear from you. Thank you.